And I will be, most of your trainers, if you actually go to any of our tutorials and some of our videos, you realize that I'm in a lot of those videos. So what we do today in our overview session really is to get you comfortable with how to use PolicyMap, really kind of navigating around the tabs and the menus and basically how to read the data and the maps.
Okay.
The goal is at the end of the session, hopefully you're able to go in, find where you're at, make some maps, generate those maps, but you'll realize as I go through some of the other features that you'll be able to translate how you use the maps into making tables, reports, and such. So it is fairly simple. So there's a lot of data in PolicyMap, and if you've seen the tool before, the data can get a little overwhelming. So what we actually did was we created a summary page, and I'll send everybody this link here, but if you wanted to see where it's at, it's on the main website. Go to Data and Data Indicators. And this is basically a summary of all the different categories of data that we have in PolicyMap. So the way it works is on the right-hand side is a table of contents that will mimic those categories, allowing you to go to each category just to see what data is available without having to click through all the different indicators. So let's say we want to find out what's in income and spending. So this will take you to income and spending and tell you that we have per capita, we have family, we have households, and so forth as you kind of scroll through. So the benefit of this page is to not only give you the overview of what's available in a category, but also start telling you some additional smaller details about each one of those data sets. So in the case of per capita, it'll show you that we have the data from 2000 for the 2000 census, as well as the most recent American Community Survey. So with census data, our baseline is 2000. We really we do not go past 2000. But with the census, we'll have the most recent census data set to go with it. And we're actually finishing the 2012 American Community Survey now, so that'll be up later this month. And then the other helpful table is the geography that data is available at, and it goes from left to right, largest to smallest, allowing our users to look at a data and kind of figure out how they want to use it. So if they're working in a neighborhood level at a very, very small neighborhood level, then they want to find data sets that are available at these block groups or census tracts or these aggregated census geographies. But if you're working in a much larger area, then you can look at these data sets that are available at metropolitans and counties and so forth. All right, so as I scroll through, you'll see some data sets have many more years to choose from, but maybe different geographies. And it is really dynamic based on the source of where that data comes from. So census really has 2 or 3 years as baseline, but then other data sources might have more years, but different geographies. So it's a wealth of data. It's a great place to start. I pretty much tell all of our users to go here first, just because there is a lot of data to interact with, and this is a neat place to get a general idea of the categories of data you're going to play with.
Just a quick question. Most
Sure.
recent 10-year census was 2010. You said
That's
the
correct.
baseline was 2000. So what's the delay if we're 4 years in for the 2010 data?
So there are 2 different types of census data that actually is published now. The biennial census, which is the one we all do for every 10 years. So we use the 2000 as kind of the starting point. And then we'll have the 2010 data. And then the American Community Survey is the yearly update that the census does now. So we'll have that in there as well. So we have both 2010 and the
Got it. Okay.
American Community Survey. Yep. All right, so the map page is pretty simple, and we're probably going to spend most of our time here, but I want to give you just a brief summary of all the different ways that you can interact with the data that we have in PolicyMap. And what you'll see at the end is that a lot of the navigation that we're going to talk about in the maps is very similar to what you're going to see in the other features, then helping you to not have to relearn how to make reports or tables and such. So the maps page in general, its goal is to give you the ability to visualize a lot of the data that we have in PolicyMap. The maps are interactive, and we're going to dig into this a little further. But on the top left, you'll see there's a few other ways. The tables allows you to compare data across multiple geographies, and you can make these tables and these bar charts. Basically, the way it works is the location bar allows you to add geographies onto the table, and then you can select the data that you want to compare against. So if you have 5 counties or 7 zip codes that you want to compare the income across, or a population or demographics, the tables are a neat way for you to make that comparison table. The reports are a much more traditional way to look at the data in PolicyMap. These are pre-built reports. Each one is a grouping of very similar data sets built around that report. And so on the left here, these are the different types of reports we have for now. We will add more eventually, as well as even have a report builder, which we'll be excited about. But the first one is probably the most common one that you can see, and then I'll show you how you can look at the Wells Fargo report, but not through here, though. So this is more the public reports that you can interact with. So the community profile is our demographic report, giving you a lot of information on the baseline of the community. So we should have plenty of time, and I'll show you this report here. The 3-layer maps is very similar to the maps page, whereas the maps, its goal is to give you the ability to visualize one thematic layer at a time and start seeing which pockets of concentration. The 3-layer maps, as it indicates, is the ability to overlay up to 3 layers of data, allowing you to cut up each layer to try to find places that intersect based on those 3 data sets. It's a really unique way to look at the data in PolicyMap. It's a great site selection because you can now use any of the data sets in PolicyMap from completely different sources to overlay and try to find places that intersect that different data category. It's also one of our more powerful places to download a bit of data and do some really neat spatial queries. We don't cover that in this session, but I do it on Wednesdays, and of course there's plenty of tutorials that will walk you through some of that. And then just the last one I'll give a quick highlight to, which is the data loader. Right now we are loading data for you through the work with Wells Fargo, but we do give your logins, each user, the ability to upload their own data as well. So much quicker, on the fly. This allows you to take a spreadsheet of addresses for now and upload those addresses, and then the system will geocode or find where those points exist and then plot them on a map for you. So if you have a quick data set that you wanted to find out how it looks on the map, the data loader is really a neat way for you to do that. All right, so those are the main ways to interact with all of this in PolicyMap. We have tutorials for every one of these, and you're welcome to give me a call at any time. But I'll show you, as you can see, the navigation in the very top, it travels within all of these features. So that way, once you get comfortable with how to zoom to a location or add a location on a map, you'll realize that's the same way that you can add tables and 3-layer maps and so forth. So besides the map itself being fully interactive, you can click and drag around, you can zoom in and out using the zoom bar, you can double click on the mouse and so forth. So it's pretty basic stuff. The location bar, though, in the very top on the maps page allows you to zoom the map to a specific location. So it works like a Google Maps. You can type in an address, it'll go to the address, drop a pin, give you this kind of info bubble to show you a little more information about that area. And then again, you have the ability to pan around, going to different neighborhoods, or zooming in and out to get maybe a broader picture of the address that you're looking at. But the location bar also works as a general location search. So you can type in places like a zip code. And it'll go to the zip code, and again, instead of dropping a pin, it'll draw the boundary to that zip code. And so it's a completely open text field. You can type in things like counties and cities and states and townships and so forth. All those geographies are places that our tool should give you the ability to search for. Are you familiar with the census and how the data is structured?
I'm sorry, the fences?
I mean, I filled it out.
Okay, perfect. So for a lot of our users, if they're not familiar with the census and how the different geographies are structured, one of the neat tools with the PolicyMap just by itself without any data loaded is the ability to just click onto the map and give you not only the boundary of the smallest geography that you're looking at, but also the different geographies that it might fit in. So in the case of this block group on the coast, on the riverside here, you'll get the block group number for that area, and then of course the nesting of geographies that it sits in, so what tract number it sits in, zip codes, counties, and so forth, as it goes higher and higher. So this is a neat building block for PolicyMap as well. You can see the different availability of aggregation of data in here. So we also then give users the ability to search for many of these, what we call predefined geographies then. And so the set location bar by default defaults to location, but if you click onto the drop-down menu, you'll then have other ways to search for many of those predefined geographies. So tracts, block groups. Congressional districts is really unique. This allows you to choose the state that you want to be in. And then it will have, oh, your first district is vacant. That's so neat. And then from there you can select the member, and of course it'll zoom there and then draw their congressional boundary. Mm-hmm. We also have localized state boundaries as well. So the state district allows you to search for, again, choose a state. The upper is your Senate, and the lower is your House or Assembly. And then it'll draw their legislative boundaries. And then finally, there are things like metro areas, there are school districts, which are unique and helpful as well. So the bar on the very top is the ability to search and zoom the map to those locations. On the bottom, though, under Map Boundaries, this will allow you to overlay many of those boundaries that you can search for. So if you click onto this, you'll get additional menus. You can scroll through a little bit, and you can see you can add things like counties on top of the map or tracts. And so the Map Boundaries is less about searching and zooming the map to a location, but more about giving you the overall visual of what those boundaries look like that you're searching for.
So Phil, do you need to, I guess obviously you go to the top first, put like the zip code in, and then you further specify that by the map boundary at the bottom?
Sure, and you don't really need to if you don't want to. It's just the option is very helpful if you're presenting a map of data and you want to show your reader maybe what the tracts look like in the area, and then you have the ability to present the tract boundaries to that person. But the boundaries are optional, so you're not required to add them on there.
Okay.
And one of the other really useful function of the Map Boundaries tab is that you can also take boundaries away. By default, roads and parks are overlaid. But again, if you're, depending on your reader, if they want a very simple map, you can remove many of those features. So that way it's just a very easy map with data on top and less about all these other graphics behind it.
Okay.
And then finally, if you want to get rid of these orange boundaries, if you click onto the map, you get these boundaries drawn here. You can remove them as well. So minor things like that that'll help you out. So those are the two main distinctions of either zooming the map to a location and then adding the boundaries that you're going to use to zoom to. So let's kind of get down to where we're at. So once you get the map to a location, the next step really is the ability to start overlaying data on top, and that's the categories right here. So the first page that I showed you, the Our Data page, that page itself is basically summarizing a lot of these categories that you're going to look at. So before we jump into the categories, I'll make two really helpful distinctions of what type of data we have in PolicyMap, and I'll have to go under housing here. So in PolicyMap, we have two different types of data. Data layers are what we call thematic data or heat maps. So it's basically data that's aggregated into these various census geographies. I'll select a quick one for you and see what it looks like. And then the other type of data is data points, which are the third and fourth column in the menu. The third column is data points that we've loaded ourselves. We've gone out and collected data from the various agencies and placed it onto the sections here. Whereas the shared data sets are users that use the data loader and choose to share it with the public to interact with, as well as how they've allowed us to access and then put it onto PolicyMap. So data layers and data points can display on the map at the same time, as you can tell. And then those are the two main distinctions, data points, data layers. So let's talk about data layers first. The categories that we have here really are trying to summarize and group together those hopefully similar data sets that they belong in. So under demographics, you're going to find some basic demographic information, including population. This is where you're going to find most of the 2010 census, as well as the 2000 census and the American Community Survey 2011-2012 data sets in here. So population, racial characteristics, there's age distribution, a breakdown of the individual age groups as well, household types, and then of course family types in the second column. With income and spending, these are all variables related to income itself or in spending types. So the first column is the things that we talked about, which is per capita, family, household. As you can tell, there's always usually a secondary category, and it's really helpful for some of the more detailed types of some of these data sets. Because with income, you can see household is broken not only into just all median household income, but also by the head of households and even income brackets. So it's very helpful to see the secondary tabs.
So do you have to click down to the secondary tabs to get the data to show?
That's right.
Like,
So
okay.
Not all of them have it. So if you do have it, then you'll have the ability to go to the next tab.
Okay.
And then there are also some other variables related to spending. So that's why I put income and spending. So things like free reduced lunch, minimum wage, low mod calculations that we do in-house, as well as I can show you the low mod calculations that are done at the federal level for different agencies. So with housing, these are all variables really related to the housing data sets in PolicyMap, including things like actual home sale data. Because you are a subscriber, the first category here, home sales, this is a subscriber-specific data set. This is from Boxwood Means, who gets their home sale from CoreLogic. And basically it's quarterly home sale data that's about usually about 2 quarters behind, mainly because it takes them that long to collect all the information, aggregate it, and then give that data to us after they clean it. But in this case, you can actually see things like quarterly home sale numbers, median amounts, change between years, change between quarters as well, calculations for loan to value ratios. And then beneath that are the general census variables. So the estimated median value of home sales, number of renters, units. Another really unique data set for your subscription is the vacancy data. So we have some very basic vacancy data from the census, but the really big one is the Velasquez data. This is the USPS Postal Service vacancy data, but they stopped publishing it to the public after 2010. And so Velasquez came in and bought the data as more recent and allowing us to basically have more recent vacancy data. So this is a really unique data set. These are postal carriers, mail carriers that determine an address vacant after 90 days. So it's basically survey data that's sent every day. That's just published every month, and quarterly that Velasquez collects. So you can see things like all vacancies or vacancies specific to residential or business property. And then under the point side of housing, you'll see things like HUD multifamily sites, low-income housing tax credit sites. We have foreclosure data. Unfortunately, it's only in Chicago. It's a pilot program that we're doing with a group with the MacArthur Foundation, but it's a neat way if you want to see foreclosure in Chicago. It's a fantastic map. So I'm going to jump into quality of life. If you wanted to look at lending, it's a pretty amazing data set. This is from the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, or HMDA. So it's a listing of all the loans that were done across the U.S. With its very specific categories. So things like piggyback, prime, subprime loans, government insured, and breakdown of head of households and such. But under quality of life, you'll find crime data and variables related to transit stops to the area, how people get to work, how long it takes, locations of things like child care services, farmers markets, and so forth. So there's a lot of indicators related to the area itself.
So just kind of a quick question as I'm watching you do this. So you're looking at the mortgage data, so you drill down and you pick I don't know, the type of mortgage. Yeah, I guess something like that. Is
Right.
it just based on the census tract, or can you get down to street level?
Oh, sure. So,
How granular can you get?
So the data layers on the first two columns are aggregate data, and the smallest geography we have in PolicyMap is the block group level, but not all data sets are at the block group level. I would say most census variables are at the block group level, but most data sets we should have at the tract level, and so there are many of those. If you're looking for address level data sets, so down to the street, then you want to look at data points, because these are going to show you icons of the site.
And that's the stuff just below it. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. So block group really is the smallest geography that we have in PolicyMap, and it's a pretty granular data set, hopefully. And not all data sets have different geographies, and I'll show you how you can actually change the type of geography that the data is shown at once we pull up a thematic layer for you.
Yeah, I'm just asking because as I click through it, I'm following along. It's, we got two census tracts that were merged in our census tract. So, if the lowest I can get on a lot of the data is census tract data, it's not really telling me much about, the sub neighborhoods or even, it's basically two population centers in this census tract. It's just giving me sort of aggregate color, so it's not really telling me anything about the people who live there.
Okay.
So
I think once we pull some data, maybe we'll kind of walk through that a little bit, because I understand the splitting of tracts, and we actually cover that in a bit of an update for us. So I'll see if I can answer that question then to show you how it happens to those two tracts after they're split. So that's a good question.
Well, they were joined, but yeah.
So I'll just jump through some final ones here. That way we can start talking about data a little more. The last one we'll talk about is just the Federal Guidelines tab. This is any other federal programs that either we participate in as a nonprofit ourselves, a reinvestment fund, or they were asked to be added into by the federal agencies itself. So it has some very basic things like the new market tax credit data, there are CDFI investment areas, there are NSP variables, your A eligible, so forth. So a lot of different variables that are federal-related federal programs that you can find here. So let's add a little bit of data, and we kind of talk about what you can do with it when it's here. I'm going to put the roads back on. So when you add a data layer, a couple of easy things. We're going to walk through the map so you can kind of learn more about how to read the data itself. The title on the very top is just giving you a very short label explaining that in this case, this is the typical median household income. If you click onto the title of the map, you'll get a lengthy or longer description of this particular data set. So what we try to do here is take from the source of that data and just make it as simple as possible with a little more explanation. So in this example, this is explaining what makes up a household, any kind of suppression rules that occurred, where the source is coming from. And then for users that really want to get further into the data, they can actually always click onto the data directory link. And this will take them to our data library, giving them a chance to see where the source is coming from, the different descriptions from that source. And then for them, again, to go even further, they can go to the main source and then actually get the raw data for any data sets. So I'll send you this link. The data library is basically just like the first page that I showed you, which is a summary of the data we have in PolicyMap. This data library is a summary of all the different sources that we use in PolicyMap and descriptions for those sources. So this description page here is dynamic for any of the indicators that you pull up. So if you were to pull up housing, it's going to talk about what makes up the housing variables and specifically even any kind of calculations. The legend, though, is where you're going to be able to read the map a little bit. So it starts out some very basic things, again, telling you the most current year that you're looking at, the variable, which is dollar amounts, because we're looking at income, and then the geography that is currently being shaded at. So this is the 2010 census tracts, because we're looking at the most recent American Community Survey, and then the values that are being shown. So what it's saying is that anything on the map is a census tract, and anything in a dark purple is a census tract that has a median household income of almost 75,000 or more. And the other side of that spectrum is less than 34,000. So at any time we can click onto the map, though, it'll draw that geography for that particular tract and then give you the value for that area that it's in, as well as the geography that it sits in. So in this example here, this tract has a median household income of a little under 30,000. The zip code that it sits in is 31,000, the city, the county, and so forth, to go higher and higher. So that means you can click anywhere in the map and get those similar variables as well. There's a neighboring tract that had a jump in income. You can also then change how the data is being shown using the legend through a variety of different things, including the years. So in the case of the question, Brian, about the different tracts either merging or splitting between 2000 and 2010, the different censuses, what we do here in PolicyMap is that we do give users the ability to look back in 2000, and then the boundaries will change. You can see now the tracts will show census 2000 instead of the census 2010, because you can't really overlay those two different data sets on the two different boundaries that are there. So in this example here then, whoops, in 2000, the tract was 25,000, which I think was 29 before, and then this one was 41,000, which was 51 before. You can also change how the data is being shown by changing the variable. So in the case of income, the variable is dollars, but you do have the ability to look at a percent change, allowing you to look at the change between 2000 and 2010. And this is really where one of the more probably useful tool of PolicyMap comes in, because we've taken the table that the census publishes, because so many tracts and block groups change between 2000 and 2010. The census created a comparative table that allows users to define and identify hopefully the same tracts or the same between the two different years, but the ones that changed, they gave a good explanation of why it changed and what you can do with when it does change. So within PolicyMap, we've kind of merged that table together, made it visual, allowing a user to look at the percent change of things like population and income and many other census variables between those two different boundaries as well as two different years. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit, Brian?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example based on what you're looking at right here. If you look where the word Camden is labeled by 30, 30, slightly to the left, you see the purple area next to census tract to the left. So that one right there, it's whatever that number is ending in 300, census tract 2010. Now flip the year to 2000 for the, If you look now, see where your cursor is with the purple?
Yep.
That was our original census tract. And then they merged this with the white area below it that covers the whole kind of highlighted area. So that's a significant difference in demographics and geographically. So when I'm looking at the data, it's giving me anything forward, all the data in that orange area, but not breaking out what our original census tract was. And I don't know, I would just straight out say the demographics are drastically different. So how do I get some granular data for, say, where that original census tract was in newer terms, in 2011, 2010 census data? Like, how do I sort of block out that area or any sub-area?
Well, in reality, you can't split a tract up.
You can't.
And the only thing you can do is you can zoom down and look at that data at the block group level, and maybe while the block groups might have changed between, the tracts might have merged, maybe your block group in this area is the same block group as it was in 2010. So that's a great question. That actually kind of leads into geographies a little bit. So depending on your zoom level, you'll see the shade by will show you that current zoom level. In this case, it's tracts. But if I zoom in one more zoom, you'll see it changes the block groups. So maybe what you want to work through then is use that data at the block group level. If I click onto this, so this is your block group in 2000. Oh yeah, you merged. They merged.
It blows, yeah. See, it blows the data. the data gets blown to pieces because, I mean, look at the differences when you look at 2010 data and look at that 2011 data. It's completely two different ends of the spectrum. So, you know, the value is when if we can get it a little more granular, even if it was split the old, I understand you don't run the census tract, but like how do we, is there a way to granularize that data to those old census tracts on current data?
There probably isn't because
Okay.
it's published at, the fact that it's actually merged at the block group level and not just the tract level, there is no other granularity. I mean, you can go and get the census block data, but the margin of error for blocks is really it's very skeptical, so I don't know how much of that information you'll be able to get that's actually usable for that. But the fact that they merged at the block group level, you're going to have a very hard time getting the comparative numbers then.
Yeah.
That's really, that's very odd.
I mean, I don't want to call it crappy data, but it's, it makes it really tough to really tell the story of what's happening. Because in the middle, you can see where it was red before, that's where all the population is. In the middle, it's all tourism and industrial, and then towards the bottom, again, there's more population there. So it's like two neighborhoods.
Right. I mean, and granted, I understand that the census aren't just merging it because of geography, and they definitely merged because there was a lack of population between those two block groups, and that made more sense. So that's why those two together. It does change the dynamic of the people that live there because you are encapsulating this completely different type of people from the section into your block group. But they are doing it because the population density between those two were so small that that they had to do it. So I wonder if the other thing you can use then is to look at the population shift. Because the percent change calculation is only going to be done at the 2010 boundary.
And that's sort of my question. Like as I'm reading this data, does that mean, in general, if those two were merged in 2010, it's up 24% from that time, or is it merged up 24% because we merged?
It is 24% because they merged, but also because the population between the two probably didn't add up to the total of what it is now in 2010. So
yeah,
if you looked
that's
at
what
just the
I wasn't
population,
clear on.
Yeah, so if you looked at just the population in 2000, you're looking at 990 there and 826 there. So if we move this to 2010, so that's a 400% increase between the two, and that's probably the reason why those two were merged.
Got it. Okay.
So I mean, if that's that's actually a good concern, right? Because you are really changing the dynamic of the people there. So because we have a lot of 2010 data already that's here, or 2000 data already that's here, and also 2000 boundaries, you might help. It might just help for you to make some 2010 maps that show the different distinctions of demographics, age groups in those old boundaries, so that if you're presenting the 2010 data, you can see why those numbers changed.
Right.
And granted, because the merger is going to really change the percentages a bit, but you do have the ability to look at what it was, at least compared to what it is now.
Right.
All right. So I mean, it's a really good concern, and that's actually a concern that the census probably doesn't really get to see sometimes when they do this kind of a general merger. Then there are some final things in that might help you out. I don't know if in your case, Brian, it'll help you out, but you do have the ability though to change the ranges a bit on the map, and it actually might help you for 2000 boundary. You can maybe play around the ranges, but this allows you to make your own cut points that you'll see in the map. And so by default, you're going to look at the quintiles that our system tries to create here, but in this example, then you can just really change the population numbers. Population is one way to kind of cut up data. Another probably easy way is to look at the demographics as well. So if you want to find out the population of Asians in an area. Again, we're looking at the 2010 census. We can go to the 2000 census and then edit these ranges. And so as you can see, the quintiles are trying to divide up the total number of block groups or tracts or whatever geography it's shaded by evenly, so that you can have an even amount of geographies displayed, and the ranges are actually shown well. Because if you just try to split this up evenly, it'll just be one solid map of this light color, obviously, because it's a very low percentage. So this is a unique benefit for a user to try to identify places that either, in this example, maybe have a high concentration of Asians in a given area by moving this number up higher, or on the other side of the spectrum, try to find a smaller concentration of this particular race groups. The ability to edit ranges is unique because it is very, it's quick. Hopefully, whoops. It's going to be a really bad map, basically showing exactly what I mentioned. Oh, that's kind of neat. So that's one of the really unique features of PolicyMap, is that we are completely web-based. All of the data and all of the thematic geographies and such are pre-rendered, so there's no load time. So you can really play with these ability to edit ranges and kind of move around. Cool. All right, so I'm going to start a little bit for a bit here, and then see if we can get to the final parts here, which is the points, and then your reports that you can look at. So I mentioned that data points are the ability to look at basically icons on a map. So in this case, I just pulled a very quick one, which is the HUD multifamily sites. And I can even remove this, and you have just a cleaner map to look at. So you can click onto a point, learn more information about that point. In the case of the HUD multifamily site, we went out and collected all the different sources for the multifamilies, and then combined them all together into one simple data set. We also turn many of these indicators that are in these points into filters. And the filters are dynamic based on the data set itself. So with HUD multifamily sites, you can filter by active, program type, total number of units. So let's say we want to show all the active sites on the map. And so now only active sites are on the map. You can also cross-filter many of the indicators. And that way you can say, show me only active ones that have less than 20. So it looks like none in Camden. But we can kind of play with the other side of that spectrum. Yeah.
So that point is like an actual building.
That's correct. Yep. So this is the icon part. So data points is going to show you actual points or the actual addresses of a location, whereas data layer are aggregate data at geographies. So data points are very simple. As you can tell, there's even some color coding functions in there as well. But for the Wells Fargo work, most of your data is going to be displayed as data points or polygons. And that will also then be available in this last tab on the very left here, which is My Data. And so this is basically a lot of data. So I have to log in as what we call a super user because I have to get to your data. But once you get here, all the data sets that Kristen processes for you will be in your My Uploaded Data section. So hopefully it'll be much smaller than mine. And then the neat feature of this right here, Data Shared By, this is the ability for a user that uses the data loader to share it specifically with your account. So it's not them sharing it with the public, but with just your particular account. So it's a really neat way to share data between users. And then the favorites is another unique feature. Any thematic data set that you add, I'm just going to go back in here real quick, you have the ability to add it as a favorite using this little star icon. And then that will add it into your My Favorites tab here. But for your data, will be under My Upload Data, and you'll have two probably that will exist here from Kristen. I'm going to resort this. The first one will be your point data, and I have to go down. And I think she's updating this, but this is kind of an example of what your data would look like then. Let me just clear this out. So this is, I believe it's a little older. I'm sure there's a process right now that you're going to try to update this a bit with them and Kristen and our policy team. But you have to be able to look at point data as one way. So very simple. This is just a map. You can have showing where your sites are at, where your locations are at. You can add a thematic layer on top of it to show things like income, So that's a very basic map, and when you're ready
real
to,
quick, how did you get to that point data? You went under My
sure,
Data.
It'll be under, for you. It'll be under My Data, and then it'll be you'll just have yours listed here. So yours will show
So it's not
whatever
there
the
yet.
name. That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So right now I pulled up the last one Kristen said, which is Rutgers Camden, but whatever she's going to process now, it'll list here.
Got it. Okay.
And then the other one that will be in your menu is this one right here, the Wells Fargo Grantees one.
Got it.
And then this one will have the polygons that policy is working with your group to draw comparative markets and such.
Pretty
Right.
cool.
So some very last things then, when you're ready to take this map and you want to print it or share it or do anything offline with it instead of just kind of playing with it on the maps part itself, the tabs up here in the very top allow you to do that. The email this page is very unique. This actually allows you to send an email to another person. That person receives a link, and that link will take them directly to the map that you're looking at, any data sets that you've added, any kind of filters that you've created for that data. So it's all kind of an easy way and quick way to share a map with another user. But you can also take these maps offline using the print function. So this print feature here allows you to do a couple of things. The first thing, which I always tell our users, is the ability to change the name. This is very helpful because by default, it's just giving you a lot of the default things that are displayed in the map. So the blocks that I selected, the data sets that I've added, and of course, the geographies. So clicking on the change name allows you to do just that. It also will be the title of your map then. So it's very helpful if you select that. The formats are really simple. The PDFs are 8x11 printouts. So if you already have something printed out and you want to insert a map into your printout, the PDFs are very useful for that. Whereas the PNG and the JPEG, these are digital files that will download onto your computer. And this is where you can take those files and insert them into a Word document or a PowerPoint or copy and paste them in there. The print is simple as well. Nothing is going to your printer. Everything gives you the option to download first. And then once you download it, you can choose however you want to use it. And a little alert will pop up eventually. So that's on that, including the point, the title, the description of the data set. So it's very helpful if you wanted to share this map with another user or just in a presentation. A lot of the basic stuff about what you are trying to share will be here, legend and so forth. All right, and then the last thing I'll talk about just quickly is the report that we're building for you then. So for you to get and access the report, I'm going to take us to Parkside and just so you can see what a report looks like. So the polygons that will appear, it will show your boundary, and then there will be an icon on the edge of that polygon. You can click onto it. And there are two different reports to look at. The first one is the one we probably want to display then. So when you click onto it, it'll just basically take you right into the reports page, but automatically load the report itself. So this is the comparative Wells Fargo community change report. So in this case, we're looking at Parkside, and what the policy at TRF is doing is trying to find comparative areas to your area using a variety of methodology to get there. But once you get here, then you have the ability to look at your data compared to a lot of those demographics that we showed in the maps part itself. So this is the population of 2000, 2010. This will be a really interesting conversation, Brian, when you are looking to design the boundary about the shift in geography. This data is based on geography, based on for the area. Again, we're using Parkside as an example here. Ethnicity, age groups, income, and the overall location of those areas. So reports can be saved and printed as well. Oops. And that's a little icon up here. And then anything that you save or print in PolicyMap will be always available in your account under this My PolicyMap tab here. Once you get to this page here, It'll give you a list of all the different sections that are on PolicyMap, things like maps, tables, reports, and so forth. And all you need to do is expand a section out, and then it'll give you a list of all the things you previously printed or saved or shared with another user, allowing you to either re-download a map, make any kind of edits, or even just reopen that map that you created. Okay, so hopefully I didn't really get a chance to pause for any specific questions. Hopefully, any questions that I can answer so far, or this seems pretty straightforward?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, seems to work.
Okay, so it is a really simple tool. What we tried our best to do is take a lot of data that's out there and put it into these really simple categories, we hope. But just remember, when you load a thematic data or just any data in PolicyMap, take a look at the legend to see how you can change that data just a tiny bit. Things like years are available, how the data is presented by the variables, the geographies. So this is a really good discussion about the shifted boundaries. And I think there's another kind of helpful one then is the map boundaries. Because we give you the ability to look at both boundaries in 2010, you do have the ability to present your case, which is here's your boundaries in 2010 and then the two different boundaries in 2000.
When will we get the upload that you're seeing all these data points? Like sometime soon, I guess.
I guess you're going to work with. You're going to work with Kristen and our policy team in that process, because they have to look at your data and then upload it up, and then also start looking at comparative areas based on your data.
Okay.
All right. So if there's any other questions, again, I'll share this recorded session with everybody. I will always be available for questions. You're always welcome to join us on either any other sessions or just shoot us an email or call us at any time. We're happy to answer any questions about the site.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Have a good day.
Take
Bye.
care.
You too. Bye.